All right, so I'm ready. Let's do it. Turning 40 was always like a really big deal to me. Since I was 20, I was like, man, I can't wait to be 40 because I've always heard like black women talk about this freedom and just confidence, and they always explain it that you're at a point in your life where if you have any fucks to give, it's like one left. And I think because I grew up wanting to please people in order to be validated and accepted, it was one of the things that drove my accomplishments, from TEDx to skydiving to being an entrepreneur. Anything that was like extreme, there was no basic in me whatsoever. And this journey to 39 really meant that I needed to like solidify who I was as a woman and really dig deep into what I came to do. So I celebrated 40 last year, and this year has been the toughest year of my life. Nobody told me like all the challenges and changes that would happen within my body, but also like externally. There's something to be said about desiring something like sovereignty, but then understanding the pathway to get to sovereignty. You don't just wake up in the morning with joy. You don't just wake up in the morning at peace. And sometimes you do, but the work that it takes to get there is oftentimes grueling and hard and challenging and tough. And so going from 39 to 40 was no different for me. It literally meant that I would journey from a mindset of sacrifice in order to belong and move into this space of sovereignty. Sovereignty for me has always been about deciding that I can stand for, by, and with myself. And for people looking on the outside, it's like, of course, Coach P, of course, Precious, that's easy for you, but it hasn't been. And when we see people who have a lot of joy or peace or that is positive or motivating other people, make no mistake about it, they have absolutely done the work to get there, especially if we're talking about moving from a space of authenticity. And so I'm recording this journey. We're documenting it because I've documented a lot of things in my life, but this was a coming of age for me. And in this space, I want to share what it has taken in order for me to go from sacrifice to sovereignty. Welcome to my journey. So it's been a while since I've been in front of the camera. So I'm surprised that I'm a little bit nervous. But what I've been doing a lot of is witnessing myself. Like, I'm a Virgo who has a moon in Taurus and a Capricorn rising. So for all of my astrology girlies and boys, you know what that means. I'm all earth. And I can be pretty grounded, but also got some Sagittarius in there too. So I'm kind of like up in the clouds. This portal that I've walked through, the 40 portal is what I'm calling it. It started at 39. I'll be celebrating 41 in just 2 days. And this journey has really been a unbecoming. If you saw my TEDx talk, that was a decade ago this past May. In 2015, I talked about how surrender was the portal that I went through in order to unbecome everything I thought I was supposed to be in order for me to be who I really am. And so a part of that experience absolutely was managing my perspective around what it meant to be, right? So going from a space of performing and doing all of the things that I thought I was supposed to do, and not performing from inauthenticity, but performing the version of myself that I thought I was supposed to be. And then unbecoming all that I'd learned from my life circumstances, from things I've experienced, to actually becoming who I was always supposed to be, who I was born as, the person, the personality, the soul's mission, and that work. And so the portal of 40 has absolutely been just that. This beautiful opportunity of walking and journeying and witnessing. The experience that I had was one that I thought I was prepared for. But it's almost like pregnancy. Like, you hear all these stories about what it means to be a mom, what it means to be a parent, what it means to carry life. And then you get pregnant and you have the baby, and everything feels all of a sudden unprepared. And so I moved to Houston at 39. I had just experienced traveling the world, 8, 9 different countries. I landed in Bali, Indonesia, and I was there for about 3 years. And it was the most transformative time in my life up to that point. And then at some part of the journey, I recognized, like, oh, it's time for me to get grounded again. It's time for me to, like, root somewhere and, like, settle in. My business had turned 9 years old, and I was going into my 10th year of creating sacred space for Black women in order for us to rest, to heal, to recover, and to really shine and walk in our worthiness. Doing that kind of work required me to obviously go through my own set of work and healing, trauma and inner child work, in order for me to guide other women, specifically Black women, through that passage. And so I'm also a mom to a this year 22-year-old, and all of those role and responsibilities that I've taken wasn't the totality of who I am, just a portion of it, right? And so at 39, I was like, okay, let's take a break. I ended a significant romantic relationship. I moved back to the United States. And I also came back to support a friend who was going through her own rites of passage as a woman, and supporting my daughter, my grandson. And then it was time to take care of me. True to my personality, I had to throw some extra shit in the mix, which meant that um, for this particular part of the journey, I had a breast reduction. I've had boobs since I was 10 years old. So I didn't even account for the emotional transition that would happen from going from a triple D down to a C cup, but also, like, what that energy meant that took up space in my body since I was 10 years old. I had that surgery in February, and then I moved to Houston in May, April, May. And it was my first time coming to Houston. I was only going to be here just to see if it was a place I could ground. And after 30 days, I made a decision, did something I hadn't done in ever. I signed a 15-month lease. What the hell was I thinking? It had to be divine, because otherwise I wouldn't have stayed as long. But within those 15 months, I became a woman. I've been telling my friends and my closest, what I call family, my friends who become my family, that Houston was a space where I was able to fully blossom. I thought I would come here and do work. I thought I would host retreats and do all these amazing things, but absolutely not. It was sincerely just a space for me to pour into myself, for me to expand and experience more pleasure, but also for me to heal deeper than I've ever healed before. What I didn't know about Houston also was that it was going to unravel all of my relationships, my friendships, business relationships, new people, old people, the relationship, kinship, family. There are so many experiences that happened in this time frame, from my maternal grandmother transitioning, who was our matriarch, being a part of that experience, and also what it meant for that energy to be physically absent from our family, my place in the family. I was born a matriarch, and I've always understood that. And so that also was a transition. My daughter crossing the threshold of 20 to 21 and putting a flag in her independence in a way that we hadn't experienced before, which was hard but beneficial for all of us. Me, all of a sudden, attracting friends who were younger than me, which I had never done before. Since I was 10 years old or 5 years old, all of my friends were always 5 and 10 years older than me. And all of a sudden, I get to Houston And I got 20-something-year-old guys who are like, what's up? And I'm like, what y'all want with me? And then I have friends who are, 32 going into 33. And that number kept being significant in this portal. And then there was like the generational misunderstanding, but also that was a space for me to be free and to be not childlike, but more jovial than I've ever allowed myself to be. I've been on my own since I was 14 years old. So there was no play. It was always super serious, and there was always a space of like, I have to handle business. I got somewhere to go. I have goals to meet. I got shit I got to do. So these 30 somethings and 20 somethings walking into my life and not attracting anyone new in my space that was around my age group was confusing, sometimes conflicting, but also a friend of mine shared with me, like, of course, you're a parent of an adult child, so you don't have any little kids. These people in their late 20s and early 30s don't have kids. And so there's this commonality of freedom. We can be anywhere, do anything. And so I started to lean into that space. And then the closer I got to 40, the more I started to like ground deeper in who I've always been, but also this balance of who I was becoming. I started to open up a bit around what it meant to be in pleasure. Things were shifting in the world. It's 2025. Everything is like on top of its own head, right? And my business, financially, this was the lowest profitable year I've ever had. I was exhausted. I was suffering from burnout and I didn't realize it. I was struggling to learn how to rest truly and deeply. And so a part of this experience has been not just witnessing, not just unbecoming, but like learning new ways of being. And the hardest part of it all has been less doing and more being. I'm a doer. I make amazing shit happen. And yet, for the last 5 years, I've been calling in. I'm allowing amazing shit to happen. I'm allowing. Oh my God, it's so hard to allow because I wanted to get in the mud and like do what I do, and I couldn't do it. Because one, I didn't have the energy. Two, I didn't even have the clarity. And this is the part of my journey where I realized that not having clarity, not knowing what the fuck is going on in my life, what am I doing, how am I going to do it, was the hardest thing, but the biggest blessing and the biggest gift, because it gave me an opportunity to really allow spirit to show up for me, to allow God to surprise and delight me, to allow my faith to move from trust, faith, to knowing, to the I am. Because it's one thing to say like, oh yeah, I got faith, I know everything's gonna work out for me, but it's another thing to be that. And so I had to like move in this space from receiving financial support from in spaces I've never done before because I'm prideful. At least I was. Being on my own so young, I had something to prove that I would always be the one to take care of me, that I would never have to depend on anybody or lean into anybody to support me. And then this year came and some of last year, that 39 to 40 to mid 40 portal was like, yeah, you're going to have to learn that you can trust that people can show up for you, that people will show up for you, and that it really is no strings attached. Experiencing trauma at a young age and transactional relationships made it difficult for me throughout my life to just receive help. It always came with a notion like, well, yeah, if you help me, what are you going to expect from me afterwards? Are you going to hang it over my head? Are you going to want me to do some shit that I got to be embarrassed about later? Like, what does that mean? And then now being in this portal was like, nah, in order for that to not be a part of your experience anymore, you're going to actually have to allow your heart to be open enough to experience it from a space where there are good people. And even some of the people where those relationships were transactional before, because you're different, that requires different of them. And so a lot of trust, that meant a lot of me being in a position of not being able to do for myself like I was before, and holding the lesson that just because I'm not able to financially show up for myself like I have been in previous years didn't change my value. It didn't change my worth. In fact, it amplified it. I had to step flat footed in who I knew I was while also allowing, gifting people the opportunity to support me, because that in and of itself is a gift. And then shifting that mindset, I experienced people thanking me for allowing them to help me. It was humbling, it was beautiful, it cracked me open, but it also allowed space for me to see God shine in a different way. I couldn't walk away from those experiences thinking, oh, that person did something for me. Yeah, human wise, they did do something for me, but spiritually, it's all God. A part of this experience was, in addition to walking through the portal of 40, was also this name change. And I say that lightly because I didn't actually change my name. I was born Precious Monique Bivings. And since I was born, everyone in the world except one person called me Precious. Um, my godmother named me Monique. I was born September 14th, 1984. And I don't know how many pounds or ounces I was. I just recently discovered that I was born at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I didn't know my birth time for a long time. Um, and a part of my identity for the first 40 years had always been that I was birthed to a teenage mom who was already a mother of one. And there was all of this journey and story that came along with that experience. And during this 40th portal shadow work journey, whatever you want to call it, I had to do a lot of death walking, a lot of dying. Precious, this first version of me, this first personality, had a lot of pain and resilience and tenacity and ambition, and she felt as though she had to prove that she was worthy and that she was a hard worker, even though by nature that's just who I was. But I've always, because of the trauma and the experiences that I had in life, always also journeyed with suicide ideation. Not that I ever wanted to physically kill myself, but I always had these moments where it was like, man, this shit is hard. This is really, really rough. Like, God, if I done completed everything, you can slap me on up out of here. And it wasn't until this journey during a meditation that I discovered that it was never truly even about a human death or a giving up or a surrendering to life, but it was more about the preparation to allow Precious, that first personality, to rest in peace, so that the second coming of who I've always known myself to be, Monique, can rise. This is the version of me that was able to witness all of these things for 40 years. And now she can take the baton and run the rest of the race. So during this meditation, once I got that epiphany, I was like, oh my God, I get it now. And now being able to not change my name, but decide to be referred to as this name that I was birthed with as well, Monique. It's derived from Monica, which is a French name, and it means the sovereign one, the one who knows, the leader, the teacher. And I was like, man, all these years, 40 years, I never even thought to research what my middle name meant, because I spent all of my life trying to understand why I would be named Precious, priceless, above rubies and diamonds, and I never felt that for myself. And when I finally got it, it was time to release that version and step into this very sovereign, resolute, absolute, confident version of myself. And so Precious did such a beautiful job of not just surviving, but thriving through all the bullshit and the trauma and slaying all of the generational cycles and holding true to all the generational blessings and strengths of everybody who came before me. And now being able to honor myself and walk through my life as Monique, not absent of Precious, because I could never be, but with a new, deliberate, and intentional personality that is absolutely meant to move with ease and be in passion and be in flow, but also with a knowing, an inner belonging, a braided, weave together type of relationship with Source that says, not only am I supposed to be here, but I'm going to succeed at the highest level internally first. And then, of course, the rest is overflow, it's abundance. So the name change, for me, obviously, it's not a change, but more of a reverence, right? Honoring. And so I'm not a person that does anything halfway. I like to take it to the max. I like to fulfill whatever the assignment is. And one of the things that ushered in through this season was embodiment. What does it mean to fully become who you've decided to be? And so, with the birth of Monique, right, bringing her center stage and putting Precious on her throne to rest in peace while she now gets to become the witness that she's always wanted, had some fun parts to it, right? It wasn't all hard and death and dark night of the soul, although the beginning of it was. But it was also like communicating to the world and to myself that I'd made this really significant change, and not for performance, because that's the other thing that shifted for me. It was going from performing and proving to actually embodying and being. And so I had to share it with the people who were closest to me, friends, lover, my daughter, who was one of the first people who I shared it with, most important, and just strangers, right? And so every time I shared with a friend or my daughter or family, like, hey, I'm deciding to go by my middle name, Monique. My daughter's like, yeah, mom, that's what I'm talking about. That's what's up. Friends were like, effective immediately, calling me Monique. And then there were some people who was like, oh, okay. Um, and then when it was time to actually like commit to it, you had folks who were like, oh, I'm having a hard time, or deciding, well, I'm gonna keep calling you Precious because you're precious to me, and me having to stand up for myself and say, no, 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 this is a practice of honoring for me. So if you could, and I know that you can, call me Monique. So changing my name when I order, say, a Uber Eats, or I'm writing my name on a card. The first time I introduced myself as Precious, I'm sorry, as Monique, I said Precious, like I just did just now. So the person was like, oh, hey, what's your name? And I was like, oh, my name is Precious. Oh, I'm sorry. I go by Monique now. Happened to be during Pride Month, so it made sense because that's a time where there's a celebration around deciding to be who you say you are. And so I allowed myself to go through this transitional period, right? And also gave grace not just to myself, but my friends who called me Precious in conversation or P in conversation. And then the question became, what about Coach P? I had been lovingly being referred to as Coach P from my clients. It's been a decade or more where people were affectionately calling me Coach P, Dr. P, P. And so I sat with, like, does that change that part of my journey? And I decided, no, at least not yet. So I'm Monique, affectionately known as Coach P. And it's been since June, so we'll say July, August, September, a little over 3 months that I've been walking and embodying in this space. Precious would have felt the pressure to be perfect in it already. And Precious would have felt like, well, if I don't say Monique every single time, then I must not be for real about it. It must not be legit. Whereas Monique is like, nah, we're giving ourselves grace and we're allowing space for it to be messy and wrong and mistakes, and we're gonna laugh about it, we're gonna celebrate it, we're gonna keep moving. And so it's been interesting witnessing myself. The other thing that came about in this journey was witnessing the two personalities, Precious and Monique, and then me, whoever I am, being in the middle, watching, facilitating, guiding, and creating sacred space for. One of the things that I want to share, and I've been sharing with my clients, is that we don't have to wait until we're midlife, 50, 60, 70. We don't have to wait until we're 21 or 25 or 35 to allow space for these kinds of changes to happen in our life. I believe, an adolescent going from 10 to 13 is a significant change. 10 to 12 even. You take 13 or 12 to 16 or 18, 21, going to college. All of these rites of passages don't have to be, waited to celebrate until someone else says that it's significant. We know it's significant because we feel the shift happen. And when they do happen, maybe for you it doesn't require a name change, or it doesn't require you to change your hair or your style or whatever, but there is cause for a pause. Who do I want to be? And then know more than anything, I don't have to stay the same to prove or to be accepted or to be loved. I don't have to sacrifice myself, right? One of the greatest lessons that I've learned in this first year of 40 is that I'm not abandoning myself to be in relationship with anyone, friendship, romantic, professionally. All of those things have happened in my 20s. They happened in my 30s. And and even in my teenagehood, and allowing space for that to not be reality now feels so freeing. Also, I learned and practiced that even when you're choosing yourself, that isn't going to necessarily be celebrated by other people. And it's okay that they leave. It's okay that they decide not to stay in your life. May be painful, but definitely okay, because one of the things that we get to recognize more than anything is that when seasons change, so does our environment, so does our relationships. And then the other thing that I've been sitting with is honoring the fact that I can just witness. I don't have to judge. I don't have to, um, you know, judge or be afraid, or I don't have to do anything other than witness. And then from witnessing, sit with how that experience makes me feel and then move from there. When I consider some of the things that have been celebrated in this year that I wasn't able to celebrate in past times, like rest, was also my softness. Before, soft didn't feel safe. It felt like if I was going to practice in softness, especially as a woman and a Black woman, no less, then I needed to be with certain people, certain weather, certain conditions. That's not the case today. Today, I recognize that my softness, not only is it not weakness, but it's strength and it's necessary. And I'm not just talking about vulnerability, but I'm also talking about like softness in my body, softness in my tone of voice, softness in my response and my reflection and my reaction. And being able to be in a soft power has been how I've decided to show up, especially in Monique. Being in soft power for me makes a difference because it allows space for me to still be who I said I was, who I worked hard to be, but also with my shoulders back and my chest up and my smile big. My happiness is one of the things that are important to me, but it's not the end all to be all. The joy and the fun and the pleasure, not the end all to be all, but just added ingredients to this incredibly beautiful life. A lot of people are afraid to do the work that it takes to embody. The reason why is because number one, it's hard as fuck, okay? Number two, there's really a fear of loss. In my coaching and intuitive practice, where I lead and guide Black women through several different types of transitions, from divorce, death, marriage, birth, career changes, midlife, all the things. One of the greatest observations that I've had is that when we are doing the work, and even when we're fully supported with a coach, a therapist, a community, there still comes a point where the ego, which wants to keep us safe and familiar, not the devil being busy, but literally this a beautiful, amazing part of us that is responsible for managing the personality that we put up front. When it is introduced to new things, it feels like a threat, no matter how good, no matter how amazing. And so we can be on this track to do the work, and then all of a sudden there's this immense fear of loss. I'm not immune to that. That part of us makes the work hard because, again, for most people, the work doesn't get done because who am I going to lose? What am I going to lose? You can take someone trying to lose weight, someone who says, I'm going to lose 100 pounds and have this massive transformation. Typically, they don't do the work, not because they're lazy or they don't want to do it, but psychologically, what am I going to lose? Who am I going to lose? Am I going to lose my environment? Am I going to lose people who are seeing me as a victim, who are willing to take care of me, that maybe won't see me as a victim? Will that part of me recognize that they're actually not a victim, that I can survive without the trauma and the things I've experienced? When you consider that, it's not just you making a change, but it's you making a change and then subtracting this old technology in exchange for a new technology, and giving your ego a new and safe familiarity that doesn't look like the past takes work, and it's scary. So as I'm guiding women through this work, it's because I've guided myself through this work. And every day I have to choose. Every day I have to choose to become who I said I'd be. This work is not without being in fetal position this year. This work is not without having to rest when I don't feel comfortable to rest, when I don't feel financially safe to rest. This work is not without or absent of relationships ending, being on a disappointment tour, disappointing others before I ever disappoint myself, and making that a practice. A part of what I've experienced through this journey, I can call it several different things, a portal, a journey, but what I've experienced most is choosing myself over and over again is one of the hardest practices I've ever had. Because it feels like the higher you go up in self-choosing, the more you feel like you're gambling or having to bet against. It feels like you're putting more money on the table to bet on you. For me, having to have tough conversations with family members about abuse that took place, having to share with a client that they've crossed a boundary, having to tell my daughter, hey, I'm going to put you on ice until you can communicate with me in this way that feels like how we communicate in a healthy and respectful way, or it means to end a friendship that I had so much fun in, but that didn't help me grow or expand me. It means walking away from business relationships that once fed me and helped put me on a map in some ways and helped create a platform and a stage. Now say no, you don't get to continue to be, and I don't get to continue to be in this space because it didn't grow with me as I grew. Tough decisions, but necessary ones, because all of those decisions fed and led to the version of myself that I get to wake up to in the morning, that I feel good about walking in. And with all of that comes the type of sacrifices I'm willing to make. I'm willing to make sacrifices that help me grow, that help me remember who I am, that help me to motivate and encourage others, that help me stay soft, that help me stay soft in my power, that hold up a mirror of love and of joy and of peace and of pleasure and of ease. Very necessary for me. So, as I prepare to cross the finish line of 41, right? And I say cross the finish line because from birth to one, that's a year complete. So the same from 40 to one, that 41 will be complete. And I'm theming it as 41, WON, because I won. I won against the voices in my mind that said that I couldn't do it. The old voices from family and folks who had my ear when I was younger, who didn't speak words of encouragement. I won against the environment I came from, the shit I went through just this year. I won. And I bought myself a trophy because I wanted to celebrate that I actually did it. I could have given up. I could have quit. But I didn't. I decided to die in that old version of myself and that old personality just to rise from the ashes like the phoenix that I am. And cheers to 41.